Welcome to Velvet Karma Stories, where every story has a touch of karma.
At 4:57 a.m., the suburbs of Connecticut were still wrapped in a gray, sleepy fog. The street was quiet except for the soft hum of a black Mercedes rolling into the driveway of the Morgan house. Ethan Morgan stepped out, adjusting the collar of his wrinkled dress shirt, the faint scent of Harper Lane's perfume still clinging to him like a guilty shadow. His hair was messy, his tie loosened, and fatigue hung heavily under his eyes. He had spent the night in a luxury suite overlooking Manhattan, wrapped in lies he kept telling himself. As he unlocked the front door, the house welcomed him with a silence so thick it felt wrong. Usually, Claire would leave a small light on in the foyer, but tonight, nothing. Only the dim glow of the kitchen bulb washed across the floor, as if someone had forgotten to turn it off in a hurry. Ethan slipped off his shoes, tiptoeing as though he feared waking the truth he had buried for months. His phone buzzed, a message from Harper. "I miss you already. Next time, let's stay the whole weekend." He smirked faintly, then slipped the phone into his pocket. But as he stepped into the kitchen, his heart dropped. On the table was a small white envelope, crookedly placed beside a half-empty glass of chocolate milk. The handwriting on the front made his stomach twist. Dad. Just 3 letters, but they hit him harder than any accusation. He opened it slowly. Inside was a sheet of notebook paper torn at the edges, written in shaky crayon strokes, blue, red, green colors of a child who still believed the world was simple. Until now. "Dad, I saw Mom crying again. She said she's fine, but I know she's not. You said you wouldn't lie anymore, but you did. If you keep making her cry, I don't want a dad like that. I will try not to need you. Jacob." His breath hitched, his vision blurred. He grabbed the edge of the table to steady himself. The walls seemed to close in, the air turning cold and sharp. He had prepared excuses for Claire, for the neighbors, for his colleagues, but he had never imagined needing excuses for his son. Behind him, a soft sound, a footstep. Ethan turned. Claire stood in the doorway in an oversized sweatshirt, her hair messy, her face pale from a night without sleep. Her eyes weren't angry. They were empty, and that emptiness terrified him more than any rage could. She stared at the letter crushed in his hand, then whispered, voice trembling, "So, you read it." Ethan swallowed hard. "Claire, She stepped closer, her voice barely audible. "Before you speak, look behind you." Ethan froze, slowly turning toward the staircase. At the top stood Jacob, holding his small stuffed bear, eyes wide with hurt deeper than any adult's lie could hide. And Jacob had heard everything. The morning after the letter, Claire Morgan sat on the edge of the guest bed in the small room she had moved into for the night, Jacob's old playroom, still crowded with toy bins and boxes of memories she hadn't opened in years. Dawn was creeping in through the blinds, washing the room in a pale, washed-out light that made everything look older, quieter, and sadder than it really was. Her hands trembled slightly as she tied her hair into a loose ponytail. She looked exhausted, not the kind of tired that sleep could fix, but the kind that settled deep in the bones after years of carrying a weight she never complained about. She had been living like this for so long, she almost forgot what it felt like to breathe without fear. Claire Morgan, 36, once dreamed of becoming a nurse practitioner at a children's hospital. She used to have ambition, plans, a life of her own. But after Jacob was born and the hospital cut her position during restructuring, she spent the last 7 years as a stay-at-home mother, unpaid, unseen, unprotected. Ethan always said, "Don't worry, I'll take care of everything." But somewhere along the way, everything turned into control. Now she had no income, no savings, no safety net, just a child who needed her and a marriage cracking at the seams. She rubbed her temples as the events of last night replayed in her mind like a movie she wished she could shut off. Ethan stumbling into the house at 5 a.m. The faint scent of Harper Lane's perfume on his shirt, the letter Jacob had written in the dark, and the moment her son stood silently on the stairs, watching them both like he was older than 7. Claire wasn't angry at Ethan anymore. Anger was loud. What she felt now was quiet, so quiet it was terrifying. It was resignation. A quiet acceptance that what she had tried to fix for years was beyond repair. She walked into the hallway, her bare feet brushing against the cold wooden floor. Downstairs, she could hear Jacob's small footsteps and the clinking of cereal in a bowl. She paused before entering the kitchen, took a slow breath, and forced her voice to sound steady. "Morning, sweetheart." Jacob looked up with tired eyes, too sad for a boy his age. He didn't run to hug her like usual. He just whispered, "Mom, are we leaving today?" Her heart cracked at the word we. He didn't ask if she was leaving. He asked if they were leaving. She nodded softly. "Just for a while, honey. We need some space." Jacob lowered his gaze, quietly picking at his cereal. Claire could see the fear in his small shoulders. She wanted to hold him, to lift all the pain from him, but she knew he was already carrying more than any child should. A sudden noise behind her, Ethan entering the kitchen. He looked like he hadn't slept at all, his face drawn and strained. "Claire, we need to talk." Her entire body stiffened. Ethan's voice always shifted when he wanted control, when he wanted to fix the narrative. It was the voice he used in conference rooms, at negotiations, at dinners with powerful clients. But Claire wasn't listening to that voice anymore. "Not now," she said firmly, surprising even herself. "Not in front of Jacob." Ethan's jaw clenched. "Claire, don't be dramatic. We can work through this." Jacob flinched at Ethan's tone, and Claire immediately stepped between them, her body becoming an instinctive shield. "No," she said again, calmer this time. "We can't work through something you've been breaking for years." Ethan's face darkened, but before he could speak, Jacob stood from his chair, gripping his stuffed bear. "Dad, I don't want you to lie anymore." The words hit Ethan harder than last night's letter, harder than any accusation Claire ever made. And Claire realized something important in that moment. This wasn't just her heartbreak anymore. This was Jacob's too. And Claire knew they had to leave before the house crushed all three of them. The Morgan house sat on a quiet cul-de-sac in Westport, Connecticut, a place where lawns were trimmed weekly, porch lights glowed warmly at night, and families waved to each other while walking golden retrievers. It was the kind of neighborhood people dreamed of raising kids in. Safe, peaceful, predictable. But inside the Morgan home, nothing felt safe anymore. That morning, as Claire packed Jacob's backpack with a few clothes, his favorite sketchbook, and the small stuffed bear he never slept without, she couldn't help looking around the house with bittersweet eyes. Every corner held a memory. The height chart on the pantry wall where Jacob's growth had been marked each birthday. The family photos lining the staircase, smiling faces taken during happier times, before the nights grew long and the lies grew louder. The kitchen table where they used to eat pancakes on Sundays, all of it seemed to belong to a different family now. Ethan paced in the living room, running his hand through his hair. He looked furious, anxious, and confused all at once. "Claire, you're blowing this out of proportion. We don't need to rush anywhere. There's no reason to drag Jacob out of the house." Claire zipped up Jacob's bag, refusing to turn around. "I'm not dragging him anywhere. I'm getting him somewhere peaceful before he breaks completely." Ethan scoffed. "You're being irrational." She finally turned to him, her voice steady but tired. "Do you know what's irrational? A man leaving his family in pain for months and pretending everything is fine." He opened his mouth to argue, but she walked past him, heading down the stairs. In the foyer, sunlight filtered through the glass door, illuminating dust floating in the air. Claire grabbed her keys and Jacob's jacket off the wall hook. It felt symbolic, like she was reaching for a life she hadn't held onto in years. Jacob came down slowly, clutching his stuffed bear, looking smaller than usual. "Mom, where are we going?" "We'll stay with Mrs. Carter for a couple of days," she said softly, "just until things calm down." Mrs. Carter was a retired teacher who lived 2 blocks away, a kind woman who occasionally babysat Jacob. Her home was modest but warm, and Claire trusted her more than anyone in their circle. Jacob nodded, but his eyes flicked toward Ethan, who stood rigid at the bottom of the stairs. "Is Dad coming?" "No," Claire whispered. Ethan's voice rose sharply. "Come on, Claire." She turned and faced him fully, and for the first time, Ethan seemed to register the depth of her exhaustion. She wasn't shouting, she wasn't pleading, she was done. "You don't get to be the hero this morning," she told him quietly. "Not after last night." He swallowed, jaw tightening. "You can't take him away. This is his home." Claire spoke so gently that it almost didn't sound like defiance. "Home isn't a building, Ethan. It's where a child feels safe." Jacob's small fingers wrapped around hers, as if telling her without words, "Let's go." They stepped onto the front porch. The October air was crisp, carrying the scent of damp leaves and distant fireplaces warming up for early morning routines. Cars passed slowly on the street, neighbors waved across driveways, typical suburban life, continuing as if nothing had shattered inside the Morgan house. Claire felt a strange hollow ache in her chest. For years, she had believed this house would be her safe haven. Instead, it became the place where her heart slowly cracked. Behind them, Ethan stepped onto the porch. "Claire, don't walk away. You'll regret this." She didn't turn around, only tightened her grip on Jacob's hand. "I already regret staying this long," she said. Jacob took one last look at his father, his small voice carrying more weight than any adult could muster. "Bye, Dad." Ethan's face fell in a way Claire had never seen. But Claire kept walking, leading her son down the driveway toward a future neither of them fully understood. Because once Claire crossed that sidewalk, nothing about their family would ever be the same again. Ethan Morgan stood inside the now quiet house, staring at the door Claire had just closed behind her. The silence pressed against his ears until it felt like the whole world had stopped. He wasn't used to silence. His life usually ran on a soundtrack of conference calls, quick emails, and Harper's flirtatious laughter echoing over dimly lit dinners in Manhattan. Silence made him feel exposed. He walked back into the living room, sinking onto the leather couch he once insisted they had to upgrade to because his colleagues owned similar ones. He rubbed his face with both hands. The sweet, expensive perfume Harper always wore still clung faintly to his shirt, the same shirt Claire had washed and folded the night before. He winced at the thought. Ethan Morgan had always been good at compartmentalizing. Work in one box, family in another. Harper in a hidden drawer no one was supposed to open. He liked neatness, control, narratives he could manage. But now everything felt scattered across the floor. He checked his phone. 3 messages from Harper. "Did you make it home? Last night was incredible. Thinking about you. When can I see you again?" He stared at the screen, thumb hovering over the keyboard. The night before, replayed in flashes, the hotel suite overlooking Manhattan. Harper curled against him on the balcony, champagne glasses half full, her voice whispering promises she never planned to keep. She made him feel young, powerful, desired, everything he feared he no longer was. He texted back only one word, later. As he set the phone down, he caught sight of the white envelope still on the table, Jacob's handwriting awkward and uneven. The truth was, Ethan didn't know how to be a father when things got complicated. He loved Jacob, sure, but he loved convenience more. He didn't know how to comfort a crying child or a hurting wife. He didn't know how to fix wounds he had caused. Worse, he didn't want to learn. His phone buzzed again, but this time it wasn't Harper. It was a message from his assistant. "Reminder, you approved Friday's transfer. CFO wants explanation." Ethan's stomach dropped. The transfer. The one he'd made to cover the Tiffany necklace he bought Harper, the one he disguised as a client hospitality expense. It wasn't the first time he blurred the lines. It wasn't even the worst thing he'd done. But the CFO asking questions meant the company was watching. He cursed under his breath. That wasn't supposed to happen. No one was supposed to look too closely. That was the whole point of being a high-ranking executive. People trusted your decisions. They didn't audit them. Not until now. He stood abruptly and paced the room. How had everything slipped this far? Claire leaving was bad enough. But the company sniffing around? That could destroy him. His job was his identity. Without it, he was just another middle-aged man with a mortgage and a reputation stained by rumors. He picked up his phone again. "Harper. Ethan? Everything okay? You're quiet." He typed. "We need to be careful. No calls, no messages unless urgent. If you come stow." 3 gray dots appeared, then her reply. "Are you scared?" His jaw ticked. No, just being smart. But he was scared. Scared of losing the life he'd built. Scared Claire would expose him. Scared Jacob would hate him. Scared of the truth catching up. He had spent years polishing the image of a successful family man, holiday cards, charity galas, photos at the beach. It was a brand. Something he curated like an online portfolio. Now the cracks were showing, and people were going to notice. Ethan poured himself a drink bourbon, even though it wasn't even Tenem. He swallowed hard, letting the burn distract him. He needed a plan. He needed control back. And he knew exactly where he planned to start. Claire. Because if Ethan Morgan was losing everything, he wasn't going to lose quietly. and the first move he planned to make would shatter Claire more than she ever expected. Claire had barely settled into Mrs. Carter's guest room when her phone buzzed non-stop. She ignored the first few vibrations, assuming they were from Ethan. But when the messages kept coming, she finally picked it up. 3 texts from neighbors. 2 from parents at Jacob's school. 1 from an unfamiliar number with a link attached. Her stomach tightened. Mrs. Carter, setting down a mug of chamomile tea, asked gently, "Everything all right, dear?" Claire forced a small smile. "Probably just people asking if we're okay." These ass. But she knew something was wrong the moment she opened the first message. "Claire, I'm so sorry you're dealing with this. If you need anything, call me." Her hands shook. She clicked the link in the last message, the one from the unfamiliar number. It opened to a social media post on a local community page. At first, it was just a blurry photo. Then she realized the truth. It was Ethan, walking out of the Beekman Hotel, his arm around Harper Lane, both laughing, both looking like a couple on vacation, not 2 people sneaking around behind a family's back. The timestamp. Last night. The night she'd waited up. The night Jacob wrote the letter. Claire's breath caught in her throat. Her fingertips went cold. She set the phone face down on the bed as if it had burned her. Mrs. Carter noticed the color drain from her face. "Claire, honey, what happened?" Claire didn't answer. She couldn't. It felt like someone had ripped the last thread holding her together. Jacob peeked into the room. "Mom, can we go outside?" Mrs. Carter said, "I can help her feed the birds." Claire forced herself to smile. "Of course, sweetheart. Go ahead." When Jacob disappeared down the hall, the mask fell. Claire pressed a hand to her mouth, fighting back a sound that wasn't quite a sob or a scream, something in between. Mrs. Carter sat beside her. "Let me see the phone." "If it's safe, Donzid." Claire hesitated, then handed it over. Mrs. Carter studied the photo, her face twisting with disbelief and disappointment. "Oh, Claire, I knew Ethan had problems, but I didn't think he was capable of this." Claire whispered, "People are seeing this. The whole neighborhood. Jacob's school parents. What am I supposed to say?" Mrs. Carter put a gentle hand on her shoulder. "You don't owe anyone an explanation. He's the one who broke the vows. He's the one embarrassing himself. 2000 Evero. But Claire wasn't thinking about neighbors. She was thinking about Jacob. He would hear things. People would talk. Kids could be cruel. Just then, her phone buzzed again, but this time, it was Ethan. "Call me now." Claire stared at the message, anger rising past the numbness. She answered. Before she could speak, Ethan's voice exploded through the phone. "What the hell did you do? Why is there a picture of me online?" Claire blinked. "What I did? You must have sent it. Who else would want to ruin me like this? Maybe the woman you were holding on your way out of a hotel?" Claire's voice was calm, too calm. "Or maybe someone in the lobby saw you acting like you didn't have a wife and child at home." Ethan growled. "This is bad for my job. You have no idea what you've started." Claire closed her eyes. "I didn't start anything, Ethan. You did." He spat out. "Take that picture down." "I can't take down a post I didn't upload." "Find the person. Call them. Fix it." She almost laughed. "Fix your affair? Fix the mess you created? Ethan, I'm done cleaning up for you." Silence crackled through the line. Then Ethan said something cold, something rehearsed, something dangerous. "If this goes any further, Claire, I'll make sure you regret walking out of this house." Claire's heart slammed against her ribs, but not out of fear, out of realization. This wasn't just betrayal anymore. This was war. And Ethan had no idea who he was about to fight. Claire lasted only a few hours at Mrs. Carter's house before the weight of everything began crushing her. She helped Jacob settle into the cozy guest room, pretending this was a mini vacation, trying to keep her voice light so he wouldn't feel the tremor underneath. But by late afternoon, when Jacob was busy drawing dinosaurs at the kitchen table, Claire excused herself and walked into the backyard alone. Mrs. Carter's yard was peaceful, maple trees rustled overhead, and a wooden swing swayed gently in the breeze. But inside Claire, the storm was violent. She leaned against the old oak tree, finally letting the truth hit her all at once. Ethan's cheating, the hotel photos, Jacob's letter, her life falling apart in public. She covered her mouth with both hands as a sound escaped her, a sound raw and broken, a sound she didn't recognize. She slid down the base of the tree until she was sitting in the grass, knees pulled to her chest. For the first time in years, Claire cried without holding back. No silent tears in the shower. No hiding behind locked doors. Just pure heartbreak. Memories flooded her mind like a cruel replay. The nights Ethan said he was working late, the holidays he spent on his phone, the birthday he missed because Harper needed help preparing for a presentation. She remembered telling herself over and over, "He's just stressed, he still loves us." But now the truth was clear. She had been loving a man who let go of her long before she realized. Footsteps approached slowly. Jacob. He had come outside with his sketchbook tucked under his arm. When he saw Claire, his eyes widened, but he didn't run to her like a child seeking comfort. Instead, he hesitated, as if unsure whether he was allowed to approach. That broke her heart even more. She wiped her face quickly. "Hey, sweetheart, I'm okay. Mommy just—" Jacob knelt down in front of her, his small hands reaching out to touch her arm. "Mom, you don't have to pretend." His voice was soft, too soft for a boy who should have been thinking about cartoons and playgrounds. Claire felt her throat tighten. "I'm sorry you had to see me like this." He shook his head. "I see you cry at home sometimes, when you think I'm asleep." Claire froze. "Jacob, sweetheart, why didn't you tell me?" He shrugged, staring at the grass. "I thought if I pretended everything was okay, then maybe you would feel okay too." That was when Claire realized her son had been carrying a burden heavier than any child should. He had watched his mother break slowly and stayed silent, hoping his silence could hold her together. She pulled Jacob into her arms, hugging him tightly. He hugged her back with equal force. After a long moment, he whispered, "Mom, is Dad mad because we left?" Claire shook her head. "No, honey, Dad is going through something. But leaving wasn't your fault. It was never your fault." Jacob exhaled shakily, pressing his face into her shoulder. "I wrote the letter because I didn't know what else to do. I was scared." Claire kissed his hair. "You did nothing wrong. You were brave. You told the truth." The wind rustled the leaves above them, like the world itself was listening. Inside the house, Mrs. Carter watched from the window, her expression softening with worry. She had seen families fall apart before, but never with a child this gentle, this painfully aware. Claire stood slowly, brushing grass from her jeans. "Come on, sweetheart, let's go inside." Jacob nodded, but before he followed her, he looked back toward the direction of their old house. "Mom," he said quietly, "is Dad going to try to take me away?" The question pierced her. "I won't let that happen," she promised, even though fear twisted in her stomach. Because deep down Claire knew Ethan wasn't finished, and the next move he made might break them even further. But she also sensed something new rising in herself, a strength she hadn't touched in years. Ethan didn't go back to work that day. He didn't check on Claire or Jacob, didn't ask where they were staying, didn't try to fix the family he had broken. Instead, he drove straight toward Manhattan as if the city could clean his conscience, as if skyscrapers and busy streets could drown out the echo of Jacob's letter inside his mind. By the time he stepped into the lobby of Harper Lane's apartment building, his anger had hardened into something sharper, something dangerous. Harper lived in a sleek high-rise in Tribeca glass walls, marble floors, the kind of place where people pretended they were better than everyone else. Ethan liked coming here. It made him feel untouchable. He knocked once, and Harper opened the door with a bright smile until she saw his face. "Ethan, you look awful." He brushed past her into the living room. "We have a problem." She crossed her arms, leaning against the doorframe. "Let me guess, your wife saw the picture." He spun around. "It's everywhere, Harper. The neighborhood Facebook group, parents' chats, someone even emailed it to me anonymously." Harper raised an eyebrow. "Well, that's what happens when you don't keep your promises." He stiffened. "What is that supposed to mean?" She walked toward him slowly, almost predatory. "You told me you were planning to leave her, that we just needed time. But it's been months, Ethan. And guess what? I'm not stupid. Your wife left you first. That wasn't part of your plan, was it?" Ethan clenched his jaw. "This isn't about leaving Claire right now. It's about protecting my job. My reputation? If nations after seas in a trust of." Harper laughed a cold, sharp sound. "Your reputation? Ethan, please, you're acting like you're some innocent victim." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You don't understand. The CFO is asking questions about a transfer I made last week." "That little Tiffany gift?" she asked casually. The one you said you'd handle? I did handle it, he snapped. But if the company digs, they'll see the amount doesn't match the client report. If they find out I've been expensing personal things, you're done. Harper finished for him. You lose the job, the car, the fancy house, the image. She paused. And me. The silence was heavy. Ethan exhaled sharply, pacing the room. I need you to lay low. Delete our messages. Stay quiet. The photo already caused enough damage. Harper's expression changed subtle, but Ethan noticed. It was the look of someone calculating her next move. She sat on the arm of her sofa, crossing her legs. You want me to disappear while you try to fix your perfect life? Just until this blows over, he said. And then what? Harper lifted a brow. You go back to her? She left, he muttered. Good, Harper replied. Less messy for you. Ethan rubbed his forehead. Harper, I could lose everything. Her voice softened, but it wasn't comfort. It was manipulation. Then maybe you should think about what you're willing to sacrifice. I can. He froze. What are you saying? Harper leaned forward, eyes sharp. Claire leaving makes things easier, Ethan. If she stays gone, you keep your job, you keep the house, you keep Jacob's school reputation clean. The board won't dare look into you while you're the poor, abandoned husband. Ethan swallowed. You're suggesting that you use this, Harper said calmly. Turn it around. Control the narrative before she does. He stared at her, stunned by how easily she said it. But then again, this was Harper calculating, ambitious, loyal only when it benefited her. She stood and walked toward him, placing a hand on his chest. Let her take the fall. Say she ran off. Say she's unstable. Say she's been emotional, unpredictable. You know how men in power survive? They rewrite the story. Ethan's pulse pounded in his ears. Harper whispered, if you want to keep everything that matters to you, you'll make sure Claire never gets the chance to speak. It's craze. Ethan closed his eyes because the truth was horrifying. A part of him was actually considering it, but what neither of them realized was this. Someone else had been listening from the hallway. A neighbor. A woman who had seen Ethan enter and heard every word through Harper's thin apartment walls. And she had quietly lifted her phone, recording everything. The next morning, Claire tried to settle into the rhythm of Mistress. Carter's home, warm sunlight through the kitchen curtains, the smell of fresh muffins, the quiet hum of peace she hadn't felt in months. But her chest was still tight, her mind replaying Ethan's threats from the night before. She didn't know if she was ready for war. She only knew she didn't have a choice. While Jacob helped Mrs. Carter plant fall chrysanthemums in the backyard, Claire sat at the kitchen table, scrolling through legal aid websites on her old phone. She didn't have money for a lawyer, she didn't have stable housing, and Ethan had the power, income, and connections. He could twist the situation easily, paint her as emotional, unstable, overwhelmed. She had seen him do worse to people at work. She closed her eyes and whispered to herself, I can't let him take Jacob. I can't. As if on cue, her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She hesitated before answering. Hello? A woman's voice came through, breathy, rushed, almost frantic. Is this Claire Morgan? Yes. Who is this? I don't know how to explain this properly, but I think you need to hear something. It's about Ethan. Claire's stomach clenched. What about him? I live next door to a woman named Harper Lane. I've seen your husband come by before. Last night I overheard them arguing, and I recorded it. I didn't mean to. It just happened because they were so loud. But, Claire, what he said, you need to hear it. It made me sick. Claire froze, completely still. The woman continued, I'm texting you the audio file. Listen to it somewhere private. And Claire, whatever you decide to do, get ahead of him. Don't let him tell the story first. The call ended abruptly. Claire stared at her phone, feeling the world tilt slightly under her feet. A part of her didn't want to press play. Another part, the part awakened by Jacob's pain, knew she had to. She stepped into the hallway and put in her earbuds. Her thumb hovered for a second, then she pressed play. Ethan's voice came through first, sharp and agitated. The photo is everywhere. Claire's going to weaponize this. I need to control the narrative. Then Harper's voice, cold and smooth. So make her look unstable. Say she ran out. Say she's emotional. You're the victim, Ethan. If she stays gone, you keep everything. Claire felt her pulse spike. Her breath shortened. Harper continued, Turn the story on her before she turns it on you. Rewrite it. Men in power survive when they rewrite. Then Ethan's voice, low and chillingly calm. Maybe you're right. Maybe I should make sure she never gets a chance to speak. Claire's hand flew to her mouth. Her knees weakened. He wasn't just cheating. He was planning to destroy her reputation. He was planning to take Jacob. She pulled out the earbuds, clutching the phone like it was a live wire. Her breath turned shallow. She had always feared Ethan's manipulation, but hearing it was something else. It was confirmation that he never saw her as a partner, never saw her as a mother, never saw her as a person to protect. He saw her as an obstacle. Behind her, Mrs. Carter's voice floated from outside. "Claire, sweetheart? You all right in there?" Claire wiped her face quickly. Yes, I'm fine." But she wasn't fine. She was trembling. She glanced out the window at Jacob, kneeling in the soil, humming softly as he planted flowers, innocent, gentle, a child whose whole world depended on her. And suddenly, something inside Claire shifted. Fear cracked, and something stronger emerged. She replayed the recording, this time not crying, but memorizing every word. This wasn't just betrayal. This wasn't just humiliation. This was evidence. A weapon. A way out. For the first time, she felt the ground solidify under her feet. Her breath steadied, her heartbeat aligned with a new determination. She whispered to herself, "He wants war? Fine, but he has no idea who he's fighting." And that recording was only the beginning of Ethan's unraveling. Claire hadn't expected her next turning point to come from a knock on Mrs. Carter's front door. It was late afternoon, golden light settling over the porch, when 3 firm knocks echoed through the small house. "Mrs. Carter wiped her hands on a towel and went to answer. Claire stayed in the hallway, tense. She wasn't expecting anyone. Ethan wouldn't dare come here, she hoped. But instead of Ethan's voice, she heard Mrs. Carter say warmly, "Well, I haven't seen you in years." Curiosity pulled Claire closer until she could see the visitor clearly. Tall, dark hair with a few early grays, a suit without a tie, and eyes that widened the moment they landed on her. "Claire?" he said softly. She blinked. "Daniel?" Daniel Price, her old college friend. The one who'd shared textbooks, late-night coffee, and 1,000 dreams neither of them had quite chased. They'd lost touch after graduation. He went to law school, she went into healthcare. Life split them onto different roads. Yet here he was, standing in a stranger's doorway with that same steady expression she remembered. She stepped forward awkwardly. How do you even know I'm here?" Mrs. Carter smiled. "I may have made a phone call. I remembered the two of you were close once. If you tection." Claire's cheeks warmed. "Mrs. Carter?" "What?" The older woman shrugged. "The girl needs help." Daniel's gaze softened. "I'm glad she called." For a moment, Claire felt exposed, like someone had peeled back all her defenses. She tightened her grip on her phone, still holding the recording Ethan never intended her to hear. Daniel noticed her tension immediately. He always had. "Claire," he said gently, "Mrs. Carter told me you left home. Are you all right?" She nodded stiffly. "We're fine. I just needed time to think." Daniel's eyes flicked down to her trembling hands. "You're shaking." Claire looked away. He hesitated, then stepped closer but not too close, just enough for her to feel someone was finally on her side. "I'm a lawyer now," he said. "Family law, civil cases. I help people get out of things they can't fight alone." He paused, voice quieter. "If you need help, I want to help you." Claire felt her throat tighten. Not from romance or nostalgia, though something in his presence did pull at old memories, but from relief. Real, tangible relief. Someone who wasn't judging her. Someone who wasn't angry at her. Someone who wasn't lying to her. She exhaled shakily. "I don't know where to start." Daniel nodded. "Then start by sitting down. Let's take it piece by piece." She led him into the living room while Mrs. Carter ushered Jacob back outside to give them privacy. Claire sat on the edge of the couch, gripping the phone in her hands like a lifeline. Daniel took a seat across from her. "Tell me everything." And she did. The hotel photo. The neighborhood gossip. Ethan's rage. The threats. The financial control. The fear he might take Jacob. By the time she finished, her voice was thin and her eyes burned. Daniel didn't interrupt once. When she finally stopped talking, she waited for judgment, pity, disappointment. But Daniel only asked one question. Claire, do you feel safe? She swallowed. Not really. Do you have proof of anything Ethan said? Any messages? Her fingers tightened on the phone. I have a recording. Daniel's posture straightened, almost imperceptibly. A recording? She nodded and handed the phone over. He listened quietly, expression hardening with every second of Harper's cold manipulation and Ethan's willingness to destroy Claire's reputation. When the audio ended, he set the phone down slowly. Claire, he said, voice deep with controlled anger, this changes everything. Her breath caught. What do you mean? It means, Daniel continued, leaning forward, you're not the one who should be worried. Ethan is. She stared at him. Daniel spoke with the confidence of a man who had pulled dozens of women out of traps like hers. I'm going to represent you, he said firmly. No fees. No conditions. You and Jacob are going to be protected. Claire felt something she hadn't felt in months. A spark of hope. A small, trembling breath escaped her. Daniel, thank you. He offered a faint smile. It's good to see you again, Claire. I just wish it were under better circumstances. For the first time, truly, she believed she might survive this. But Daniel wasn't finished. Tomorrow, he said, standing with purpose, we start fighting back. If you want to. And Ethan Morgan was about to learn what it felt like when the truth finally had a voice. The next morning, Claire woke before sunrise. She'd barely slept, but for the first time since leaving the house, her exhaustion felt different, less like drowning and more like bracing for a storm she finally had help facing. Daniel had promised to return at 9, and she wanted to be ready. She pulled her hair back, washed her face, and forced herself not to look like the broken version of herself Ethan expected. Jacob shuffled into the kitchen, rubbing his eyes. Mom, is Mr. Price coming today? Claire poured cereal into his bowl. Yes, sweetheart, he's going to help us. Jacob nodded slowly, sensing the weight of help even if he didn't understand the legal part. Is Dad still mad? Claire hesitated. I don't know, but we're safe here. She wished she believed it fully. At exactly 9:05, a knock sounded at the front door. Claire's stomach tightened until she opened it and saw Daniel holding a laptop bag and 2 coffees. I figured you didn't sleep, he said, handing her one. Claire let out a nervous laugh. You'd be right. They settled at Mrs. Carter's dining table, Jacob in the living room building a Lego fort. Mrs. Carter hovered in the kitchen, just in case, though they all knew she simply wanted to be nearby in case Claire's heart broke again. Daniel opened his laptop. All right, here's the plan. We need evidence. Real evidence. The recording is powerful, but we need to show a pattern, financial control, emotional manipulation, instability on his part, not yours. Claire nodded, though her hands trembled slightly. Where do we start? Bank statements, Daniel said. Messages, voicemails, anything he sent you in anger. And if he transferred company funds for personal expenses, that's a huge problem for him, not you. Vetoes. Claire exhaled shakily. He did. A few times. Daniel's eyebrows lifted. Perfect. That's leverage. Leverage, she repeated softly. She had never thought about having leverage over Ethan. She had always been the one without power. Just then, Claire's phone buzzed. A text from Ethan. Where are you hiding? Jacob belongs with me. If you don't come home, I'll take legal action. Another text followed before she could process. You left the house without permission. That's abandonment, Claire. Daniel leaned over and read the messages. His jaw tightened. Classic intimidation tactic, he muttered. He's bluffing. Claire swallowed. He sounds so sure. Of course he does, Daniel said. Men like Ethan always sound sure until someone turns the mirror on them. He typed quickly on his laptop, then said, Move over. I need you to write down everything he's done this past year. Dates, places, anything that felt wrong or manipulative. Frode. Claire took a deep breath and started writing. At first, her notes were shaky, her handwriting uneven. But as the minutes passed, something shifted. The more she wrote, the more the fog lifted. She remembered every moment she had minimized, every moment she had excused, every moment he had twisted into her fault. By the time she finished, the paper was full. Daniel skimmed the list, nodding. This is more than enough for the first filing. Thanks for watching. Hence, before Claire could respond, her phone rang again, this time a call. Ethan. Daniel held up a hand. Put it on, speaker. Claire did. Ethan's voice came through sharp as a blade. Claire, you need to bring Jacob home. Right now. You're making us look ridiculous. Daniel mouthed, stay calm. Claire steadied her voice. We're staying here, Ethan. We need space. You don't get to decide that, Ethan snapped. Jacob is my son. You left, not him. Daniel's eyes narrowed. Claire swallowed. You left him long before I did. Silence. Then Ethan said something that made Daniel sit upright. You think running off to your old friend's house makes you smart? Newsflash, Claire. If you push me, I'll push back harder. Daniel spoke for the first time, his voice dangerously calm. Ethan, this is attorney Daniel Price. Claire is not alone. Any further threats will be recorded and used in court. The silence on the line was electric. Then Ethan said, you have no idea what you're getting into. Daniel smiled coldly. Actually, Ethan, I think you don't. The call ended abruptly. Claire stared at Daniel, breathless. He's furious. Daniel closed his laptop. Good. Angry men slip up. And Ethan? He's about to make the biggest mistake of his life. Because Daniel had just filed the emergency custody paperwork, and Ethan didn't know it yet. Claire didn't know how long the quiet would last after Daniel filed the emergency custody paperwork. Hours? A day? But she felt it coming, like thunder crawling across a dark horizon. And when the storm finally hit, it hit harder than she imagined. It began with an email. Just before noon, while Claire was helping Mrs. Carter fold laundry, her phone buzzed with a notification. A message from Ethan's attorney, someone she'd never heard of. Douglas and Pierce Law Group. Even the name sounded cold. The email read, Mrs. Morgan, we are reaching out on behalf of Mr. Ethan Morgan. Please note that your recent actions constitute parental alienation. Our client is prepared to file for full custody if you do not comply with returning the minor child to the marital home immediately. Claire's throat tightened. Mrs. Carter looked over her shoulder. What is it, dear? Claire handed her the phone with shaking hands. He's going for custody, full custody. And 14. Mrs. Carter's face hardened. He's faster than I expected. Right then, the front door opened quietly. Daniel stepped in, a folder tucked under his arm. I got your text. What happened? Claire handed him the phone. He read the email once, then again, his jaw clenching tighter each time. They're accusing me of alienating Jacob, Claire whispered. I'm not. I would never. I know, Daniel said, placing a steady hand on her arm. This is a scare tactic. They want you rattled. If you can stand this thing, to dispose end on by. It's working, Claire admitted, her voice cracking. Daniel opened his laptop at the dining table and pulled out a fountain pen from his inside pocket, a polished Mont Blanc with small scratches, clearly well used. He clicked it with purpose, as if each move prepared him for battle. Listen carefully, he said. This email proves Ethan's team is scared. Filing threats this quickly means they know we hit hard first. Their goal is intimidation, but they just gave us something valuable. And, Claire blinked, valuable? Daniel nodded. They jumped straight to accusing you of alienation without evidence. Judges hate that. It makes Ethan look impulsive and aggressive. He typed rapidly, drafting a response that was calm, firm, and surgical. Mrs. Morgan has acted solely to protect the minor child's emotional well-being during a period of instability created by Mr. Morgan's own actions. We reject all allegations of alienation. Additionally, we have substantial evidence indicating Mr. Morgan's misconduct, which will be submitted to the court. Claire watched him type, every word like a shield being forged. She felt her heartbeat slow, just slightly, knowing someone was fighting for her. But the calm lasted only minutes. Because Ethan called next, not Claire, not Daniel. He called Mrs. Carter. Her landline rang, an old black phone with a coiled cord resting on a small wooden table in the hallway. She answered out of habit. Hello? Ethan's voice thundered through the receiver. Mrs. Carter, I know my wife is there. Tell her to pick up her damn phone. Mrs. Carter lifted her chin. Ethan Morgan, you will not use that tone in my house. Where's my son? Ethan snapped. Put him on the phone. Claire stepped back, heart pounding. Mrs. Carter replied firmly, Jacob is safe and busy. You may speak to Claire if she chooses to speak with you. That's it, Ethan growled. I'm calling the police. She took him without permission. Claire felt her stomach drop. Jacob, hearing the raised voices, peeked from the living room doorway, clinging to his stuffed bear. "No," Claire whispered, stepping forward. "Ethan, please don't involve the police. Not in front of Jacob." Daniel took the phone from Mrs. Carter with quiet authority. "Ethan, this is attorney Daniel Price. If you contact the police with fabricated claims, we will respond with a motion citing harassment and emotional endangerment. I suggest you stand down." For a moment, nothing but silence. Then Ethan said something that chilled everyone in the room. "You think I'm bluffing? Watch me." The line clicked off. Claire's breath hitched. He wouldn't, not with Jacob here. Daniel closed the landline receiver gently. He might. Men who lose control often escalate. Claire's knees weakened. "What do we do?" she whispered. Daniel straightened. "Pack a small bag. I'm taking you and Jacob somewhere he can't touch, not until the judge sees the recording and the financial records." Mrs. Carter gasped. "You're moving them?" Daniel nodded. "Tonight?" Claire stared at him, stunned. "Where are we going?" Daniel's voice was calm, but his eyes burned with certainty. "To a place Ethan will never think to look, and somewhere you'll finally be safe." Added venerations auras. But as they prepared to leave, blue sirens appeared at the end of the street. Ethan hadn't been bluffing. Claire didn't know how long the quiet would last after Daniel filed the emergency custody paperwork. Hours? A day? But she felt it coming, like thunder crawling across a dark horizon. And when the storm finally hit, it hit harder than she imagined. It began with an email. Just before noon, while Claire was helping Mrs. Carter fold laundry, her phone buzzed with a notification. A message from Ethan's attorney, someone she'd never heard of, Douglas and Pierce Law Group. Even the name sounded cold. The email read, "Mrs. Morgan, we are reaching out on behalf of Mr. Ethan Morgan. Please note that your recent actions constitute parental alienation. Our client is prepared to file for full custody if you do not comply with returning the minor child to the marital home immediately." Claire's throat tightened. Mrs. Carter looked over her shoulder. "What is it, dear?" Claire handed her the phone with shaking hands. He's going for custody. Full custody." Mrs. Carter's face hardened. "He's faster than I expected." Right then, the front door opened quietly. Daniel stepped in, a folder tucked under his arm. "I got your text. What happened?" Claire handed him the phone. He read the email once, then again, his jaw clenching tighter each time. "They're accusing me of alienating Jacob," Claire whispered. "I'm not. I would never." "I know," Daniel said, placing a steady hand on her arm. "This is a scare tactic. They want you rattled." "It's working," Claire admitted, her voice cracking. Daniel opened his laptop at the dining table and pulled out a fountain pen from his inside pocket, a polished Mont Blanc with small scratches, clearly well used. He clicked it with purpose, as if each move prepared him for battle. "Listen carefully," he said. "This email proves Ethan's team is scared. Filing threats this quickly means they know we hit hard first. Their goal is intimidation, but they just gave us something valuable." Claire blinked. "Valuable?" Daniel nodded. "They jumped straight to accusing you of alienation without evidence. Judges hate that. It makes Ethan look impulsive and aggressive." He typed rapidly, drafting a response that was calm, firm, and surgical. "Mrs. Morgan has acted solely to protect the minor child's emotional well-being during a period of instability created by Mr. Morgan's own actions. We reject all allegations of alienation. Additionally, we have substantial evidence indicating Mr. Morgan's misconduct, which will be submitted to the court." Claire watched him type, every word like a shield being forged. She felt her heartbeat slow just slightly, knowing someone was fighting for her. But the calm lasted only minutes. Because Ethan called next. Not Claire, not Daniel. He called Mrs. Carter. Her landline rang, an old black phone with a coiled cord resting on a small wooden table in the hallway. She answered out of habit. "Hello?" Ethan's voice thundered through the receiver. "Mrs. Carter, I know my wife is there. Tell her to pick up her damn phone." Mrs. Carter lifted her chin. "Ethan Morgan, you will not use that tone in my house." "Where's my son?" Ethan snapped. "Put him on the phone." "If you can of reason." Claire stepped back, heart pounding. Mrs. Carter replied firmly, "Jacob is safe and busy. You may speak to Claire if she chooses to speak with you." "That's it," Ethan growled. "I'm calling the police. She took him without permission." Claire felt her stomach drop. Jacob, hearing the raised voices, peeked from the living room doorway, clinging to his stuffed bear. "No," Claire whispered, stepping forward. "Ethan, please don't involve the police, not in front of Jacob." And Crete. Daniel took the phone from Mrs. Carter with quiet authority. "Ethan, this is Attorney Daniel Price. If you contact the police with fabricated claims, we will respond with a motion citing harassment and emotional endangerment. I suggest you stand down." For a moment, nothing but silence. Then Ethan said something that chilled everyone in the room. "You think I'm bluffing? Watch me." The line clicked off. Claire's breath hitched. He wouldn't, not with Jacob here. Daniel closed the landline receiver gently. He might. Men who lose control often escalate. Claire's knees weakened. "What do we do?" she whispered. Daniel straightened. "Pack a small bag. I'm taking you and Jacob somewhere he can't touch, not until the judge sees the recording and the financial records." Mrs. Carter gasped. "You're moving them?" Daniel nodded. "Tonight." Claire stared at him, stunned. "Where are we going?" Daniel's voice was calm, but his eyes burned with certainty. "To a place Ethan will never think to look, and somewhere you'll finally be safe." But as they prepared to leave, blue sirens appeared at the end of the street. Ethan hadn't been bluffing. The distant flicker of blue lights grew brighter as the police car rolled slowly down Mrs. Carter's quiet street. The hum of the engine cut through the calm afternoon like a blade. Claire froze in the middle of the living room, Jacob clinging to her hip, his small hands gripping her shirt with fear. "Mom, are they here for us?" Jacob whispered. Claire swallowed hard. "No, sweetheart, they're just here to talk." But she didn't believe her own words. Mrs. Carter hurried to shut the curtains, her face pale. Daniel stepped forward, calm but tense, adjusting the jacket of his suit as if readying himself for battle. "Claire," he said quietly, "you need to remember something. You did nothing wrong. You didn't kidnap your child. You didn't break the law. You left an emotionally unsafe environment. That's not a crime." Claire nodded shakily. Okay, I'll try." But her hands trembled violently. A firm knock sounded at the front door. Mrs. Carter moved toward it, but Daniel gently stopped her. "Let me." He stepped outside and closed the door halfway behind him. Claire hovered near the hallway, barely breathing, listening as voices murmured on the porch. "Good afternoon, sir," one officer said. "We received a call from Mr. Ethan Morgan claiming his wife removed their child from the family home under suspicious circumstances." Daniel answered calmly. Mr. Morgan omitted the part where Mrs. Morgan left due to his ongoing emotional abuse. "She is safe. The child is safe. And we have a pending emergency custody filing with the court." Even everyone, the officers exchanged glances. "Is Mrs. Morgan here?" the second officer asked. "She is," Daniel replied, "and she will speak with you briefly, but under my supervision." Claire's stomach clenched as Daniel stepped inside and motioned her forward. She set Jacob down gently. "Stay with Mrs. Carter, okay? I'll be right here." Jacob nodded bravely, though his bottom lip quivered. Claire joined Daniel on the porch. She forced her spine straight, though every instinct screamed for her to run. The older officer spoke kindly. "Ma'am, we just need to confirm your safety and verify that you left the home voluntarily." Claire nodded. "I did." "Did Mr. Morgan harm you or threaten you?" She hesitated, not because she didn't know the answer, but because emotional threats always felt harder to name. "Yes," she finally said. "He threatened to ruin me, to say I abandoned my son, to take him away. I didn't feel safe staying in that house," Daniel added. "We also have recorded evidence of Mr. Morgan discussing plans to manipulate the situation legally and publicly against her. If needed, we can submit it to your department." The officers stiffened slightly. This wasn't the simple domestic dispute Ethan had framed. This smelled like something deeper, more dangerous. "Do you wish to return home, Mrs. Morgan?" the officer asked. "No," Claire said firmly. "Not now. Not until the court hears everything." The officer nodded thoughtfully. "You have every right to stay where you feel safe. As long as there is no standing custody order violating your decision, there is nothing illegal happening." Daniel stepped in. "We filed the emergency motion this morning. A judge should review it within 24 hours. The officer scribbled notes. "All right. We'll file a statement documenting this interaction. If Mr. Morgan attempts further harassment. Call us immediately. Claire exhaled her first real breath in minutes. As the officers walked back to their car, Jacob peeked through the window, eyes wide. When the police finally drove away, Claire stepped back into the house, and Jacob ran into her arms. Mom, are they taking me away? Claire hugged him tightly. Never. You're staying with me, always. Mrs. Carter wiped tears. Daniel closed the door gently, his voice low. You handled that perfectly. To 7. Claire managed a small, tired smile. I didn't feel perfect. That's what makes you strong, Daniel replied. Strong people don't feel ready, they just show up anyway. Claire felt something shift within her fear, cracking open to reveal a quiet resilience she had forgotten existed. She looked at Daniel. What happens now? Daniel's eyes darkened with focus. Now, we disappear for a few days. Somewhere Ethan can't reach you, while the judge reviews the filing. Claire nodded slowly. Where? Daniel gave her a reassuring half-smile. My sister's cabin, upstate, no one knows it exists. And for the first time, Claire felt like she was stepping toward safety. Not running away, but running forward. The drive upstate took nearly 3 hours, winding through quiet highways lined with tall pines and fading autumn leaves. Claire sat in the passenger seat of Daniel's SUV, while Jacob slept in the back, his head resting against a pillow. Mrs. Carter had packed, his stuffed bear tucked under his arm. Claire kept glancing at him, as if double-checking he was really safe. Daniel noticed. He's okay, he said softly. You both are. Claire smiled weakly. I know. It's just... the last 24 hours feel like a nightmare I haven't woken up from. That's why we're going somewhere no one can reach you. No neighbors, no police, no Ethan. No signal? Claire guessed. No signal, Daniel confirmed. You'll get a breather. If you not. She exhaled. A breather sounded like a luxury she hadn't had in years. The cabin sat on a small lake, hidden behind rows of cedar trees. It was cozy, rustic, and quiet. Too quiet at first, almost unsettling. But when Jacob woke up and pressed his face to the window, whispering, Mom, there's a boat, Claire felt some of her tension melt. Inside, the cabin smelled of pine and old books. Daniel opened windows to air the place out, while Claire set Jacob up on the couch with blankets. This is beautiful, she murmured. Daniel shrugged modestly. It was my dad's before he passed. I come here when the world gets too loud. Claire's eyes softened. Thank you for bringing us. You don't have to thank me, he said. I told you I'm not letting Ethan steamroll you. Daniel stepped outside to get firewood, and for the first time since the night of the letter, Claire was alone with her thoughts. She sat by the window, watching Jacob explore the cabin excitedly, touching everything like it was a new adventure. And then something hit her. Jacob was smiling, really smiling. Not the forced smile he'd been using for months. Not the guarded one from yesterday. A real, honest, little boy smile. Claire felt tears rise. She brushed them away quickly. She didn't want to cry anymore. She wanted to rebuild. That peace lasted an hour. Then the storm found its way to them anyway. When Daniel returned with firewood, his phone buzzed repeatedly, despite having almost no service. He frowned, stepping outside to catch a clearer signal. Claire waited anxiously until he returned, his expression dark. What happened? She asked. Daniel locked the cabin door behind him before speaking. Claire, Ethan went public. Her blood ran cold. What do you mean public? Daniel pulled out his phone. Before reception dropped, I got several notifications. Your neighborhood group, Reddit, even Facebook. Someone leaked a post, apparently from Ethan's lawyer. It claims you left home unpredictably, that you took Jacob in a state of emotional instability. Claire pressed a hand to her chest. No. No. No, he wouldn't. He did, Daniel said. And it gets worse. He implied you're having a mental health crisis. Claire's breath shattered. My postpartum depression. He's using it? Daniel nodded. He's spinning the story to make you look unstable. And he's Strapchino in 100C. Claire sank into the nearest chair, tears threatening. This is exactly what Harper told him to do. Daniel crouched in front of her. Hey, look at me. Ethan planted lies, but he doesn't get to decide the truth. Claire shook her head. Everyone will believe him. No, Daniel said firmly, not when we present the recording, not when the court sees the financial proof, Not when they hear how Jacob's been affected. Claire swallowed hard. I can't let him twist my son's life into a weapon. If you won't, Daniel said, but you need to be strong. She wiped her face, nodding slowly. I can be. Meanwhile, Claire didn't know one critical detail. Ethan's story wasn't landing the way he'd hoped. Neighbors were suspicious. Parents at school were whispering. And someone had leaked screenshots of him and Harper at the hotel before Ethan ever wrote his first lie. The narrative was slipping out of his hands. Back in the cabin, Jacob walked over to Claire and slipped his small hand into hers. Mom, he whispered, is Dad mad again? Claire shook her head gently. Let me worry about Dad. You just be a kid for a while. Jacob nodded, then leaned his head against her shoulder. Daniel watched them both, his expression softening but with a fire burning beneath. Claire, he said quietly, this is only the beginning. And Ethan has no idea the kind of truth we're about to unleash. And because what Daniel hadn't told her yet was this. Someone else had come forward with information about Ethan, Harper, and money missing from the company. Back in Manhattan, while Claire and Jacob settled into the quiet safety of the lake cabin, Ethan Morgan was drowning in a very different kind of silence. Not peaceful silence, isolating silence. The kind that follows a scandal before it explodes. He walked through the glass doors of Brightwell Technologies' headquarters, his polished shoes echoing sharply across the marble lobby. People didn't greet him like usual. Some looked away. Others whispered. A few stared directly at him with cold curiosity. He hated it. He rode the elevator to the 22nd floor, straightening his suit jacket the way he always did before a big meeting. But something was different today. The receptionist didn't smile. His assistant barely looked up, and the walk to his office felt longer than usual, heavier. Inside, an envelope sat on his desk. Ethan's pulse kicked. He opened it hastily. Internal audit notice. A review has been initiated regarding recent executive expenditures and client reimbursements. Please prepare relevant financial documentation for the compliance committee by Friday. His hands trembled. This was not routine. This was a warning shot. His phone buzzed Harper. He ignored it. It buzzed again. And again. Finally, he answered with a snap. What? Her voice came out low, frantic. Ethan. Someone contacted me. About what? About us? About the money. She paused. And I think somebody at the company is talking. Ethan closed his eyes. His entire world, the one he'd built on careful lies and curated appearances, was beginning to tilt. He kept his voice steady. Calm down. No one can prove anything. Are you sure? Harper hissed. Because I just got a message from an unknown number with screenshots of your hotel reservations. Ethan, they know. I don't know who, but they know. Ethan's grip tightened on his phone. Don't panic. Stick to the story. Harper didn't answer right away. Then she whispered, which story? The one where you told me you were leaving Claire? Or the one where you told Claire I was a meaningless mistake? Or maybe the one where you told your company I was a client? Ethan froze. He had forgotten something important. Harper had a memory like a trap. Just keep quiet, he said sharply. No matter who calls. Harper's voice changed cool, distant. You know what, Ethan? I'm starting to think I'm the one who should be worried here, not you. The call ended. Ethan cursed under his breath, pacing his office like a cornered animal. Just then, his assistant stepped in timidly. Mr. Morgan, the CFO wants to see you, now. Ethan straightened. About what? She swallowed. He didn't say, but he didn't look happy. The CFO's office was a glass-walled corner space with a sweeping view of the city. Normally, Ethan admired it. Today, it felt like a cage. The CFO, a calm man in his 60s, motioned him inside. On the table in front of him were 3 printed documents, all of them familiar. A hotel invoice from the Beekman Hotel. A jewelry purchase falsely logged as client hospitality. A credit card statement showing duplicate charges. The CFO slid them toward Ethan. Can you explain these? Ethan forced a confident smile. Of course. Simple clerical errors. I don't, the CFO cut sharply. Someone sent us the original receipts this morning from a private number. These aren't clerical errors. They're personal expenses hidden under company funds. Ethan's stomach hollowed. The CFO leaned forward. Is there anything else you want to tell me before this escalates beyond an internal review? Ethan opened his mouth, but no words came. Because before he could speak, the CFO added something that made his blood turn to ice. We also received an anonymous audio file. Ethan's heart stopped. The CFO clicked a button on his laptop, and Ethan heard his own voice fill the room, echoing back at him like a sentence being read aloud. Make her look unstable, say she ran off. Rewrite the story. And 7 daughter and the washin' to 8 D's the rest 7. Then Harper's voice. Use her mental health. She'll never recover from that. Then Ethan again. Maybe I should make sure she never gets a chance to speak. Ethan staggered, gripping the back of the chair. This is taken out of context. No, the CFO said coldly. This is the context. Ethan's face flushed red, then pale. I'm putting you on immediate administrative leave pending investigation, the CFO continued. If this is substantiated, you'll be terminated. And possibly charged. Ethan could barely breathe. As he stumbled out of the office, his assistant looked at him, no sympathy, no curiosity. Just realization. Everyone knew. Everyone. And for the first time, Ethan knew exactly what Claire must have felt all those years he dismissed her. But unlike Claire, he had no one to blame but himself. The lake cabin woke slowly the next morning, sunlight slipping through the thin curtains and casting soft amber streaks across the wooden floor. For the first time in what felt like forever, Claire slept more than a few hours. No crying, no pacing, no bracing herself for Ethan's footsteps or tone of voice. Just rest. When she opened her eyes, she saw Jacob curled up beside her, still asleep, his little hand wrapped loosely around her arm. It hit her then a simple truth. He slept soundly, because she did. She brushed a hand gently over his hair, whispering, I'm going to make this right for you, I promise. Ezovan. Downstairs, she found Daniel making coffee in the small kitchen, sleeves rolled up, looking far too calm for a man carrying her entire legal future on his shoulders. He glanced over. Morning. Claire rubbed the sleep from her eyes. Did you sleep at all? A little. He handed her a mug. You needed it more. She wrapped both hands around the warmth. Thanks, Daniel, for everything. I know I keep saying it, but you don't owe me anything, he interrupted. I want to help you. If you dollar. Claire studied him. It wasn't the words, it was the way he said them. No pity, no condescension, no savior complex. Just sincerity, something she hadn't felt from a man in years. Did something happen last night after I fell asleep? She asked. Daniel hesitated, then nodded. A contact of mine forwarded me a few things. Screenshots circulating in Ethan's office chat groups, and Claire, his co-workers, think he's finished. She blinked. Finished? As in, fired? Not yet. But the investigation is serious, and the recording, well, that's spreading too. Claire swallowed. I didn't want to ruin him. I just wanted to protect Jacob. I know, Daniel said gently, but Ethan ruined himself long before you left. She nodded, though her heart felt heavy. She never imagined the father of her child would fall so hard, or that she'd feel this conflicted watching it happen. Jacob came padding down the stairs then, hair sticking up, face sleepy. He climbed into Claire's lap instantly, and she kissed his temple. Hungry, buddy? Daniel asked. Jacob nodded shyly. Can we have pancakes? Daniel smiled. We can attempt pancakes. No promises about quality. The moment was small but warm, Jacob giggling as Daniel burned the first pancake, Claire laughing for the first time in months. The cabin kitchen filled with lightness that had been missing from their lives. After breakfast, Jacob colored quietly at the coffee table, while Daniel set up his laptop at the dining table. Claire, he said, tapping the screen. I need to walk you through what happens next. She sat beside him. Okay, tell me. We're submitting the full evidence packet today, recordings, financial inconsistencies, timeline. Once the judge reviews it, he can issue temporary custody to you and a restraining order preventing Ethan from contacting or approaching either of you. And ideas of us. Claire let out a shaky breath. And after that, Daniel said, we build the long-term case. And Claire. He looked at her with steady reassurance. You're going to win. She stared at him, stunned by how certain he sounded. No one had ever spoken about her future like that, with confidence, not doubt. But Ethan won't stop, she whispered. He never stops. Daniel leaned closer, lowering his voice. He can't stop what's already in motion. If you never. Something in his tone made Claire's heart beat faster, not from fear, but from something she hadn't felt in a long time. Safety, respect, possibility. As she studied him strong, calm, steady, she realized Daniel wasn't simply helping her survive Ethan. He was helping her rebuild Claire. Later that afternoon, Claire took Jacob for a short walk along the lake. The water rippled in small waves, the air crisp with pine and autumn. Jacob skipped stones while Claire watched quietly, absorbing every peaceful moment. She didn't notice Daniel watching from the cabin porch, arms crossed, eyes soft. He saw something Ethan never cared to see, a woman who had been underestimated for far too long. A mother who fought through fear to protect her child. A person rebuilding from ashes with more strength than she realized. When Claire and Jacob returned, Daniel met them halfway. "We just heard from the court," he said. "The judge reviewed our emergency filing." Claire's breath caught. "And?" Daniel smiled a slow, victorious smile. "You won the first round, Claire." But neither of them knew. Ethan had just learned where the cabin was. The lake cabin woke slowly the next morning, sunlight slipping through the thin curtains and casting soft amber streaks across the wooden floor. For the first time in what felt like forever, Claire slept more than a few hours. No crying, no pacing, no bracing herself for Ethan's footsteps or tone of voice, just rest. When she opened her eyes, she saw Jacob curled up beside her, still asleep, his little hand wrapped loosely around her arm. It hit her then a simple truth. He slept soundly. Because she did. She brushed a hand gently over his hair, whispering, "I'm going to make this right for you, I promise. If we will." Downstairs, she found Daniel making coffee in the small kitchen, sleeves rolled up, looking far too calm for a man carrying her entire legal future on his shoulders. He glanced over. "Morning." Claire rubbed the sleep from her eyes. "Did you sleep at all?" "A little." He handed her a mug. "You needed it more." She wrapped both hands around the warmth. "Thanks, Daniel, for everything. I know I keep saying it, but—" "You don't owe me anything," he interrupted. "I want to help you, if it possible." Claire studied him. It wasn't the words, it was the way he said them. No pity, no condescension, no savior complex, just sincerity. Something she hadn't felt from a man in years. "Did something happen last night after I fell asleep?" she asked. Daniel hesitated, then nodded. "A contact of mine forwarded me a few things. Screenshots circulating in Ethan's office chat groups. And Claire, his co-workers, think he's finished." She blinked. "Finished? As in, fired?" "Not yet. But the investigation is serious. And the recording, well, that's spreading too." Claire swallowed. "I didn't want to ruin him. I just wanted to protect Jacob." "I know," Daniel said gently, "but Ethan ruined himself long before you left." She nodded, though her heart felt heavy. She never imagined the father of her child would fall so hard, or that she'd feel this conflicted watching it happen. Jacob came padding down the stairs then, hair sticking up, face sleepy. He climbed into Claire's lap instantly, and she kissed his temple. "Hungry, buddy?" Daniel asked. Jacob nodded shyly. "Can we have pancakes?" Daniel smiled. "We can attempt pancakes. No promises about quality." The moment was small but warm, Jacob giggling as Daniel burned the first pancake, Claire laughing for the first time in months. The cabin kitchen filled with lightness that had been missing from their lives. After breakfast, Jacob colored quietly at the coffee table, while Daniel set up his laptop at the dining table. "Claire," he said, tapping the screen, "I need to walk you through what happens next." She sat beside him. "Okay, tell me." "We're submitting the full evidence packet today, recordings, financial inconsistencies, timeline. Once the judge reviews it, he can issue temporary custody to you and a restraining order preventing Ethan from contacting or approaching either of you. Is to us." He watches the broad G. Claire let out a shaky breath. "And after that?" "After that," Daniel said, "we build the long-term case." "And Claire?" He looked at her with steady reassurance. "You're going to win." She stared at him, stunned by how certain he sounded. No one had ever spoken about her future like that, with confidence, not doubt. "But Ethan won't stop," she whispered. "He never stops." Daniel leaned closer, lowering his voice. He can't stop what's already in motion. The Messistam, 2x. Something in his tone made Claire's heart beat faster, not from fear, but from something she hadn't felt in a long time. Safety, respect, possibility. As she studied him strong, calm, steady, she realized Daniel wasn't simply helping her survive Ethan. He was helping her rebuild Claire. Later that afternoon, Claire took Jacob for a short walk along the lake. The water rippled in small waves, the air crisp with pine and autumn. Jacob skipped stones while Claire watched quietly, absorbing every peaceful moment. She didn't notice Daniel watching from the cabin porch, arms crossed, eyes soft. He saw something Ethan never cared to see. A woman who had been underestimated for far too long. A mother who fought through fear to protect her child. A person rebuilding from ashes with more strength than she realized. When Claire and Jacob returned, Daniel met them halfway. "We just heard from the court," he said. "The judge reviewed our emergency filing." Claire's breath caught. "And?" Daniel smiled a slow, victorious smile. "You won the first round, Claire." But neither of them knew. Ethan had just learned where the cabin was. The sky had already turned a soft pink when Claire felt the first shift in the air, subtle, uneasy, like a distant ripple before a storm. She didn't know why her chest tightened. Nothing looked wrong. Jacob was on the couch drawing superheroes. Daniel was on the porch taking a call with the court clerk. The cabin was quiet, safe, protected. At least, it should have been. Claire was folding Jacob's clothes when she heard Daniel stop talking mid-sentence. His voice didn't fade, it cut off sharply, like something had shocked him. She walked toward the porch. "Daniel?" she asked quietly. He didn't answer. He stood completely still, staring down the narrow gravel road leading to the cabin. The wind rustled the tall cedars lining the driveway, branches shifting like warning hands. Claire stepped beside him, and her breath caught in her throat. A black SUV sat halfway up the road. Its headlights were off, but the engine idled. Smoke curled from the exhaust, faint but unmistakable. The car didn't move forward or back. It just sat there, watching. Claire felt something primal inside her scream. "Run." Daniel exhaled slowly. "He found you." Her voice cracked. "How? How could he know we're here?" Daniel clenched his jaw. "I don't know. My sister never shares the address. It's not on social media. Not even past clients know about it." But there was no doubt Ethan's car was unmistakable. Claire backed away from the porch, heartbeat slamming against her ribs. "Jacob." Daniel grabbed her arm gently but firmly. "Go to him. Stay behind me." The engine revved. The SUV crept forward another few feet, gravel crunching under its tires. The sound carried through the forest like a threat. Inside the cabin, Jacob looked up at Claire with wide, confused eyes. "Mom? Why do you look scared?" She knelt, cupping his cheeks. "Listen to me, sweetheart. We're okay, but I need you to go into the bedroom for a few minutes. All right? Take your bear with you." "Is it Dad?" he whispered. Claire hesitated long enough for Jacob to understand the truth. His throat worked. "Mom, I don't want to talk to him." "You won't," Claire promised. "I promise." Daniel stood at the door, shoulders squared, every inch of him ready. Claire had seen him calm before, but never like this. Protective, prepared, dangerous, in the way good men become when someone threatens a child. The SUV suddenly lurched forward. Claire's breath caught. Daniel stepped outside before she could stop him. "Ethan," he shouted, "turn the engine off and stay where you are." The SUV stopped again. The driver's door swung open, slamming against the wind with a violent crack. Ethan stepped out, hair disheveled, tie loose, eyes bloodshot. He looked nothing like the polished executive who once strutted around Manhattan. He looked unhinged. He pointed at Daniel. "Move out of my way." Daniel didn't flinch. "You were ordered by the court not to approach Claire or Jacob." "I don't care about your orders," Ethan snarled. "They're my family." Claire stepped to the doorway. "Don't you dare come any closer." Ethan's gaze snapped to her, wild, shaking. "Claire, please, just come home. We can fix this. I'll tell the company you misunderstood everything. I'll make a statement." "No," Claire said, her voice steady for the first time in years. Ethan's face twisted. "You think this guy can protect you? You think he cares about you?" Daniel stepped forward. "This is your only warning. Leave." Ethan lunged. Daniel reacted first. One swift move, blocking Ethan, pushing him back with controlled force. Ethan stumbled, slipping on the gravel, nearly falling. "Don't touch me," Ethan screamed. "Then stay away from her," Daniel said coldly. Ethan pointed at Claire again, shaking with rage. "If you don't come with me right now, I'll—" "What?" Daniel cut in. "You'll threaten her again? Go ahead. I'll let the judge hear every word." Ethan froze, chest heaving. And for the first time, Claire saw fear in his eyes. Not fear of losing her. Fear of losing everything. He stepped back toward his SUV, breathing hard. "This isn't over." Daniel took another step. "Yes, Ethan. It is." Ethan hesitated, rage simmering. Then he got in the car, slammed the door, and sped away so fast gravel shot into the air. The cabin fell silent. Claire collapsed to her knees, shaking. Daniel rushed to her. "Are you hurt?" he asked urgently. She shook her head, breathless. "No. But he knows where we are." Daniel helped her to her feet. "Then we move. Tonight. Somewhere safer." Claire looked toward the road where Ethan disappeared into the trees. She wasn't broken anymore. She wasn't the same woman he once controlled. Her voice steadied. "Daniel, I'm ready to fight." And for the first time, she meant it. Daniel didn't waste a second after Ethan's SUV disappeared down the road. He grabbed his laptop bag, stuffed files inside, and ushered Claire and Jacob into the cabin's main room. "We're leaving in 15 minutes, he said with a sharpness Claire had never heard from him before. "Ethan showing up here means he's spiraling, and spiraling men become unpredictable." Claire held Jacob close. "Where do we go?" "Somewhere he can't find you," Daniel said. "A place with actual security." In this, he didn't elaborate, but something in his voice told Claire he had a plan, and not a small one. While Daniel packed, Claire sat with Jacob on the couch. His small body trembled in her arms. "Mom," Dad looked so angry. She kissed his forehead. "He'll never hurt you. Do you hear me? Never." But she couldn't shake the fear rippling through her own bones. 10 minutes later, they stepped outside, the cold evening wind brushing against their faces. Daniel helped them into the SUV, keeping a protective arm near Claire at all times. As he slid into the driver's seat, his phone buzzed violently, one message after another. Daniel glanced at the screen, and his eyebrows lifted. "What is it?" Claire asked, bracing herself. Daniel exhaled slowly. Ethan just made the biggest mistake of his life. He handed her the phone. On it were links to news articles. Not gossip pages. Not neighborhood forums. Actual business news outlets. The headlines were brutal. CFO places Morgan on leave amid financial scandal. Anonymous audio raises questions about executive conduct. Brightwell Technologies under internal review after misused funds discovered. Claire's heart pounded. This is everywhere." Daniel nodded. "The recording leaked. Someone inside the company sent it to the press." Claire swallowed. "But how did they get it?" "Remember the neighbor who recorded Ethan and Harper? She contacted the company directly. Someone connected the dots." As they pulled onto the main road, Claire scrolled through the articles. Her hands shook, not out of fear anymore, but disbelief. The recording was quoted word for word. "Make her look unstable. Rewrite the story. Make sure she never gets a chance to speak." Journalists were calling it evidence of coercive manipulation. Business analysts were calling it career suicide. Comments online called Ethan worse. The tide had turned, but Daniel wasn't smiling. He was gripping the wheel tightly, focused on the road. "Daniel," Claire said softly, "is this good for our case?" "It's devastating for his," Daniel replied. "The judge will see who he really is. The public pressure alone might force the company to terminate him by the end of the week." Claire let out a breath that felt years overdue. Ethan was losing everything he had used to control her. But the victory felt bittersweet, painful, real. She looked back at Jacob, who watched her anxiously. "Mom, is Dad going to jail?" She hesitated. "I don't know, sweetheart, but whatever happens, it won't be because of you." Jacob nodded slowly, trusting her completely. As the SUV wound down the dark forest road, Claire turned back to Daniel. "Where are we going?" He gave her a faint smile. "A friend of mine owns a townhouse in Beacon Hill, Boston. It has gated entry and private security. We'll stay there until the hearing." "That and us." Claire blinked. "Daniel, that must cost a fortune." "Don't worry about that," he said. "He owes me a favor." She stared at him, this man who had stepped into her chaos without hesitation, who shielded her from Ethan's rage, who gathered evidence while she rebuilt herself piece by piece. "Why are you doing all this?" she whispered. Daniel looked at her, eyes steady. "Because you deserve protection, Claire, and because Jacob deserves stability, and because—" He paused, the rest left unsaid. Because he cared. More than he should. More than he planned to. But before the moment could settle, his phone buzzed again. Another message. This one from his legal assistant. "Urgent. Ethan just filed an emergency petition claiming you abducted Jacob. Hearing moved up to tomorrow morning." Claire's lungs froze. "Tomorrow?" she whispered. "But that's too soon." Daniel shook his head. "No. It's perfect." Claire frowned. "Perfect? How?" Daniel turned onto the highway, eyes blazing with purpose. "Because tomorrow, Claire, the judge will hear everything. And once the truth is spoken in that courtroom, Ethan won't walk out the same man he walked in." Claire barely slept in the Boston townhouse. Even with the gated entrance, even with the private security downstairs, even with Daniel in the next room reviewing documents until 2 a.m., her body refused to calm. She lay awake listening to Jacob breathe softly beside her, the rise and fall of his chest, the only steady thing in her world. Tomorrow the hearing. Tomorrow the truth. Tomorrow the moment Ethan had been trying to crush before it ever saw daylight. At 7 a.m., Claire forced herself out of bed, dressed quietly, and braided her hair with trembling fingers. Jacob sat at the edge of the bed, clutching his stuffed bear. "Mom, are we going to see Dad today?" Her breath caught. "Yes, sweetheart. But you won't have to talk to him." Jacob's eyes dropped. "I don't want him to be mad at you." She knelt in front of him and held both his hands. "He can be mad at me. What matters is you're safe, okay?" He nodded, brave in the way only a child trying not to cry can be. Daniel knocked gently. "We should leave in 10. Claire grabbed her coat, Jacob's backpack, and the file. Daniel prepared pages of dates, texts, financial receipts, and the recording. Every step down the townhouse stairs felt like stepping toward a cliff. The courthouse in downtown Boston stood tall and intimidating, all glass and stone. Reporters lingered near the entrance, business journalists who recognized Ethan's name after the scandals leaked. Claire froze at the sight. Daniel stepped closer. "Ignore them. They're here for the company story, not you. But they'll take pictures," she whispered. "So let them," he said. "The world knowing the truth helps you today. If you have created us." Inside, the air felt colder. Claire's heart hammered against her ribs as they approached the family courtroom on the second floor. Ethan was already there. He stood near his attorney, his face pale, his hair unkempt, his suit wrinkled, nothing like the polished executive she once followed through charity galas. His eyes flicked to Claire, rage, fear, and something bitter, loss. But when he saw Daniel walking beside her, Ethan's expression twisted. He stepped forward, voice thick with fury. "You think you won? You think this is over?" Daniel stopped him with a raised hand. "Step back, Ethan." Ethan sneered. "You're not her husband." "No," Daniel said evenly, "but I'm the one who protects her now." Before Ethan could respond, the bailiff opened the courtroom door. "Morgan v. Morgan, custody, emergency petition. Please enter." Claire's legs nearly buckled. Daniel touched her elbow lightly. "I'm right here." They stepped inside. The judge, a silver-haired woman with a calm but razor-sharp presence, looked over the file on her desk. "Mr. Morgan, your petition requested emergency custody due to alleged instability from Mrs. Morgan. Please present your reasoning." Ethan's attorney stood. "Your Honor, Mrs. Morgan disappeared with the child without notice. She left the marital home unpredictably. There are concerns about a past depressive episode." "That was postpartum depression 7 years ago," Daniel interjected. "Successfully treated." The judge held up a hand. "Mr. Price, you'll speak when acknowledged." Ethan cleared his throat dramatically. "Claire isn't thinking clearly. She took Jacob because she's emotional. She's refusing to let me see him." Claire stared at him. That wasn't confusion in his voice. That was performance. The judge turned to Daniel. "Your response?" Daniel stood slowly, sliding a USB drive across the table. "Your Honor, we have substantial evidence contradicting Mr. Morgan's claims." "Proceed," the judge said. Daniel hit play. Ethan's voice filled the courtroom. Make her look unstable. Rewrite the story. Make sure she never gets a chance to speak. Ethan's face drained of color. His attorney stammered. Your Honor, this recording is taken out of context. The judge lifted a hand. I heard the context. Claire stared at the table, tears stinging her eyes, not from pain this time, but from the shock of hearing justice begin. Daniel continued. We also have financial records showing Mr. Morgan using company funds for personal reasons. He is currently on administrative leave due to an active internal investigation. The judge reviewed the pages quietly. Then she looked at Ethan. Mr. Morgan, she said slowly, you filed a petition built on lies. You misrepresented your wife's mental health. You knowingly endangered her safety by approaching her residence after she left due to emotional distress. And you manipulated financial resources. Ethan opened his mouth, but nothing came out. The judge signed a paper in front of her. Temporary full custody is granted to Mrs. Claire Morgan. Mr. Ethan Morgan is prohibited from contacting either her or the child until the next hearing. Motion for supervised visitation will be considered at a later date. Claire's breath collapsed into a sob she tried to hide. Daniel placed a hand on her back, steady, warm, grounding. Ethan slammed his fist against the table. You can't take my son from me. The bailiff stepped forward instantly. Sir, control yourself. The judge's voice cut through his rage like ice. Mr. Morgan, you took your own son from yourself. Ethan sagged, defeated. Claire watched him crumble, finally understanding that this wasn't triumph. It was justice. And for the first time in years, Claire Morgan walked out of a courtroom not as the broken wife, but as the mother who survived. The courthouse steps felt unreal beneath Claire's feet as she walked out into the cool Boston air, Jacob's hand tightly in hers. The sky was a muted gray, the kind of sky that usually signaled rain, yet to Claire, it felt like the first clear day she'd had in years. Jacob looked up at her anxiously. Mom, are we going home now? Claire squeezed his hand. We're going somewhere safe, sweetheart. Somewhere peaceful. One force. Daniel walked beside them, holding the file of signed court orders with the same care one might use to carry something sacred. The weight of the judge's decision lingered in the air. Temporary full custody to Claire. No contact from Ethan. Supervised visitation only pending review. Claire still felt like she was living inside someone else's story, until Daniel gently said, You won, Claire. Her chest tightened. It doesn't feel like winning. Daniel nodded. It feels like surviving. Winning comes later. They were almost to the sidewalk when a cluster of reporters approached. Claire froze. Mrs. Morgan, do you have a comment on your husband's financial scandal? Is it true he diverted company funds to cover personal expenses? Do you feel vindicated after today's ruling? Claire stood still, overwhelmed, unsteady. Daniel stepped forward, shielding her with his body. No comment. Please respect the family's privacy. Thank you for watching. He guided her and Jacob through the crowd until they reached the SUV. Claire buckled Jacob in, but her hands were trembling. Daniel noticed. You okay? He asked softly. Claire shook her head. I've never had people shouting my name before. Daniel smiled gently. That's because people didn't know your story before today. As they pulled away from the courthouse, Daniel's phone buzzed again, a text from a colleague in New York. They fired Ethan, effective immediately. Daniel exhaled. It's done. He's out. Claire swallowed, staring out the window as the city blurred by. She didn't cheer. She didn't smirk. She didn't celebrate. She just sat there, absorbing the enormity of what she'd escaped. Losing the company meant losing his reputation. Losing the hearing meant losing control. Losing his family meant losing himself. But instead of feeling triumph, all Claire felt was tired. When they reached the townhouse, Jacob ran ahead, relieved the ordeal was over. Daniel lingered with Claire near the door. You were incredible today, Daniel told her. Claire let out a breathy laugh. I felt like I was going to faint. That's the thing, Daniel said. You stood anyway. She met his eyes warm, steady, unwavering. Something inside her softened in a way she hadn't allowed in years. Daniel, she whispered, I don't think I could have done any of this without you. His expression shifted, gentle but intense enough to make her heart flutter. You did the hardest part yourself. I just helped clear the path. Claire looked away, flustered by the warmth creeping into her chest. Not romantic, not yet. Something quieter, something like trust. Before Daniel could say more, Claire's phone buzzed. a number she didn't recognize. Her stomach knotted until she read the message. Mrs. Morgan, this is Detective Alvarez with the NYPD. We'd like to speak with you about financial crimes relating to Ethan Morgan. This could support your custody case further. Claire showed the text to Daniel, eyes wide. Daniel's brows lifted. The charges are starting. Charges? Claire echoed. Daniel nodded. If they have enough evidence, fraud, misappropriation of funds, he's not just losing his job, Claire. He could lose his freedom. Claire steadied herself on the kitchen counter. It was overwhelming. I don't want Jacob to see his father go to jail. I just want him safe. Daniel softened. And he is. Because of you. Jacob appeared then, tugging her sleeve. Mom, can we read a book together? Just us? She smiled, brushing his hair back. Of course, sweetheart. I'd love that. Jacob ran to grab his favorite dinosaur book. As Claire turned to follow him, Daniel gently touched her arm. I'll call the detective and arrange a safe conversation. You don't have to face anything alone anymore. She nodded. Thank you, everyone. Daniel watched her walk toward Jacob, something tender in his eyes, something he tried not to let show. Because for the first time since this nightmare began, Claire wasn't walking with fear behind her. She was walking toward a future where she wasn't the one holding her breath, waiting for someone else's next mistake. A future where Jacob laughed freely. A future where she made decisions, not apologies. And somewhere deep down, Ethan's fall had finally given Claire space to rise. 3 weeks passed. 3 weeks that felt like someone had lifted a crushing weight off Claire's chest. The Boston townhouse became a temporary sanctuary where Jacob's laughter returned, where meals tasted warm again, and where nights didn't end in fear. Claire had started sleeping without waking up in panic. She even began taking short walks by the harbor, feeling her lungs stretch with air she hadn't tasted in years, clean, calm, hopeful. But healing didn't mean forgetting, and justice wasn't finished. One cold Friday morning, Daniel knocked on her door, wearing a calm but serious expression. In his hand was a folder thicker than any she had seen before. Claire, he said softly, we got the final report. She swallowed. About Ethan? Daniel nodded. NYPD, the Financial Crimes Unit, Brightwell Technologies, everything is in here. Her hands trembled as she opened the folder. Page after page, statements, emails, receipts, digital transfers Ethan tried to hide. It was undeniable. He really did all of this? She whispered. Daniel didn't sugarcoat. Yes, and more. She sank into a chair. It wasn't triumph she felt. It wasn't even satisfaction. It was something quieter. Relief not because Ethan was falling, but because she finally understood. She had spent years thinking she wasn't enough. But she had simply been lied to. There's more, Daniel said gently, taking the seat beside her. Ethan entered a plea deal this morning. Claire's breath caught. A plea deal? Brightwell turned over the internal evidence. He admitted to misusing funds. He'll likely avoid prison, but he'll be on probation for years. Career ruined. Reputation gone. If the day, Claire lowered her gaze. I never wanted Jacob to lose a father. Daniel reached out, resting his hand over hers, a touch not demanding, not intrusive, but grounding. He didn't lose a father, Claire. He lost a man who refused to grow into one. Her eyes filled, but she didn't cry. Not this time. That afternoon, Claire and Jacob walked along the waterfront, bundled in coats against the crisp wind. Seagulls swooped overhead, and the faint smell of salt water drifted by. Jacob held her hand, swinging it lightly. Mom? He asked. Are we going to live here forever? Claire smiled. Maybe not forever, but long enough to start fresh. Will Dad be okay? She paused. I hope so. Everyone deserves the chance to be better. Jacob nodded, accepting that answer more easily than an adult might. Children forgive in ways adults forget how to. That evening, after Jacob fell asleep on the couch with a blanket around him, Claire stepped onto the townhouse balcony. The city lights shimmered below, scattered across the water like tiny pieces of hope reflecting back at her. Daniel joined her quietly. Beautiful night. It is, she said softly. They stood side by side, the kind of silence that felt warm instead of heavy settling between them. You know, Daniel said after a moment, most people in your situation would still be in pieces. But you rebuilt yourself in weeks. Claire laughed gently. I didn't do it alone. No, he agreed. But you did the part only you could do. She looked up at him, then really looked. The steady kindness in his eyes, the quiet strength, the patience, the way he always made space for Jacob first, the way he never once made her feel small. Daniel, she said quietly, I don't know what comes next. I don't know how to start something new. He shook his head. You don't have to know. Healing isn't a race, and I'm not going anywhere. Her chest tightened this time with something warm. Hope. Possibility. A future she hadn't dared imagine. He took her hand lightly, not pulling, not asking for anything, just offering warmth. Whenever you're ready, he whispered, you won't have to walk into that future alone. She smiled, soft, genuine, the kind she hadn't felt since before her world cracked. Inside, Jacob stirred and murmured, Mom? Claire squeezed Daniel's hand once before letting go. Coming, sweetheart. She walked back in lighter than she'd felt in years. And as Daniel watched her go, the truth settled into the room like evening light. Claire Morgan wasn't just surviving anymore. She wasn't just fighting. She wasn't just escaping the past. She was stepping finally into a life she deserved. And for once, the door behind her was closed for good. So, our story has finally come to an end, my dear friends. And if you're still here with me right now, it means something in this journey touched your heart in a quiet, personal way. Maybe it reminded you of your own strength, or of a moment when you, too, had to walk away from something that was breaking you. Claire's story teaches us something simple but powerful. We don't control what happens to us, but we always control how we rise after. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The obstacle is the way." And truly, every wound she carried became the doorway to her healing. When she finally chose courage over fear, the world opened in front of her. And Jacob, that little boy, reminds us that love is worth protecting, even when the path gets dark. If you're going through something painful, remember, you're not alone, and this moment does not define your future. Like the Stoics said, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Your healing begins the moment you choose yourself. If this story moved you, even just a little, give it a like, share it with someone who needs courage today, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories that speak to the heart. We're right here with you. Always.